Greetings, comrades. Belton here. I've heard your cries. Capitalism is so 2024. So today, we're getting bitten by that socialist bug and we're redistributing some of that good old rate class wealth. Occupy Wall Street. Joking aside, as a follow-up to my last video where I showed you guys how I was making over 1,000 divines a day crafting crit quivers, and as a way to celebrate hitting 45,000 subscribers on YouTube, today I'm going to show you guys how to craft quivers for profit or for self-use with any budget. Crafting with food stamps? No worries. In this video, we got you. The previous video essentially started at the midway point of a finished craft, with 3 T1 suffixes already on the item, as you can see on the screen, similar to this. Many of you expressed frustration with the entry cost being so high, as the starting point shot up to around 80 divines as soon as the video was uploaded. Today, I'm going to show you guys how to start from scratch with a literal white base and take you up to where we started in the previous video, giving you the data, video demonstration, and an explanation on how to do each step. Why to do it that way, and where and how profit can be made along the way. Again, if you take a look at my sales data here, you'll see that these go from anywhere from 1 annulment up to 75 divs and everything in between. Furthermore, I will then show you guys, why to do it that way and where profit can be made along the way. Furthermore, I will then show you guys several different ways or variants on how to finish the craft from different starting points, all of which can also be used or sold. This video took me over 22 hours and 3 days of playing to record, all of which I had to do off stream so that this wasn't value extracted by the time I got it to you guys and uploaded. The editing took several hours after that. I've set a goal for myself of reaching 50,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of this league, and with your guys' help, I hope we can make that a reality. If you appreciate videos like this and would like to help support those efforts, leaving a comment, liking the video, hyping the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications would be the best way to do so. I will continue to put forth the effort on my part, so long as it is improving my ability to help you guys learn and keep getting better. The encouragement through comments and motivation through engagement go a long way in keeping that fire and drive alive in me. For those of you who help fuel that, thank you very much. Now, let us begin. So, again, part 1 here, we're going to be starting from literal white bases. So this little first part of the video, you're just going to see me buying stuff in the back. So, buying white bases to use perfect transmutes and perfect augments on. Perfect augments and transmutes are essentially free and cost 1x or less than 1x each. The quiver bases that you want to use are item level 82 visceral quivers, with normal being the best starting quality, but technically you could also use magic ones as well. However, the normal would be, you could technically use magic ones as well. However, the normal quiver bases were 1 annul each, and thus buying the magic item, which would require annuls to be used on it to then be augmented, is somewhat self-defeating, as that same annul could be used to just buy a new base. We are primarily looking to hit T1 flat lightning and or +2 to projectile skills. The odds to hit T1 flat lightning are 200 out of 3,500, +2 proj are 200 out of 400, which means that it's 1 in 16 for +2 proj and 1 in 13.5 for T1 lightning. The combined odds are 2 out of 15 or 1 in 7.5, and the bases cost between 80 and 100x or just 1 annul each. I found it easier to just buy them by annulls, especially from a gold cost perspective, or approximately 3 to 1 divine. Perfect transmutes are 1/6 of an exalt, so you get 6 for 1x or 1800 to a divine. Perfect augments are 1.8x each or about 180 for a div. And the +2 proj base as a magic item sells for 6 divs to 7 divs, and the T1 lightning sells for 4 divs. Assuming, or averaging the two, we'll just do that for the basic math. We will estimate the sale price of a desired outcome from a magic state to be 5 divs. This is a minimum value as it assumes only one good mod on the magic state. If you get another modifier that is desired on the end item paired with either lightning or +2, the price goes up even more. The cost per successful outcome at 100x per attempt with a 1 in 7.5 chance to succeed means the average cost to create one is 750x or 2.5d per success. The sale price average on the low end being 5 divs means that we will make 1,450x on the sale, 700 of which is profit, and that translates to 2.41 divs profit or positive EV every 7.5 quivers, or 93.3 exalts positive EV for every quiver that you augment and transmute. Approximately, in simple terms, every time that you augment and transmute 3 quivers, you will earn 1 divine at a profit margin of 93%. The quivers that do not hit the quivers that do not hit either one can be sold back at cost in many cases, since people will buy ones that have either bow skills or proj for an annul each. As I showed you guys at the beginning, I have a ton of those sales. All of those were just ones that didn't hit. And sometimes they even sell for more. The above margins don't even factor that in, and again, only assume that you're hitting a single one of those mods each time. So in reality, the margin for profit here is actually higher. If you're dead set on just wanting to do a couple of bases, or if you have a 30% crit implicit and don't want to waste the perfect base, it is also okay to just annul and augment a single base over and over. It's much faster, and naturally the turnaround time is much more manageable, but it is obviously more expensive. So in the video I've had playing in the background here, it was me buying the bases, and there I think I had 71 or 72 of them that I augmented and transmuted, that we're going through here now and pricing out, and just looking through the sales data there. And then as well, just to demonstrate both of the methods I was just talking about. This is just me pricing them out here. I'm also gonna show you guys in a moment the scenario where we do the annulling and the augmenting as well. For demonstration's sake, I just did both. Another thing to consider too is that you can also 3-to-1 the brick quivers to get back an unidentified magic version. Although I believe that is both a waste of time and currency. The price floor here for entry is 100 exalts, and the average price per success is less than 3 divines. This should be available to all, and this is how you should navigate both the normal and magic phases of a quiver. And again, we will transition to the next step in a second here. You'll see me, this is the annulling and augmenting. We've got the 4 bases going, and hit a couple of ones up the top there. And while this is playing out, I will start explaining the next step. So after you've got it from a magic state, we want to go into part 2, which is obviously the regaling and the fracturing. So to get it to a rare state, we can either use the accuracy essence, the greater essence, which turns a magic item rare. We can use a regal or a perfect regal and coronation. And then add a desecrated modifier, but not ID it. So we would use a jawbone, and then simply fracture for a 1 in 3 chance to hit. The +2 fracture is 18 divs, and the lightning one is 14 divs. If you look at my sales data that I was showing you at the beginning there, I actually just sold a perfect fractured lightning one for 30 divs. And I sold a couple of the +2 fractures for I think 15 or 16. And I just hit those right before starting this recording. So they do move quickly. Let's say the average sale price between the two though is 16 divs. If it costs us 2.5 div per success and it takes 3 average to hit a fracture, that means it would be 7.5 divs in bases and 1 div in the Regal's Essence, Jawbone, and Fracturing Orbs needed to hit one, meaning we would spend 8.5 divs on average per fracture, and we would return 16 divs. Alternatively, those bases could just be sold for 15 divs as magic items, so the relative or comparable expected value is only 1 div higher for the fracture attempt versus selling the magic. However, and I can't overstate, the rare fractures will be far more liquid, meaning that they'll sell much faster. The downside to which is the variance element of fracturing. It's only a 1 in 3, so doing a reasonable amount of these, you should fall towards the mean relatively quickly. However, if you're very, very poor, or if you're completely risk averse, then you may prefer to sell magic. If the numbers get thrown askew at the release of this video, you can even consider farming bases, like the white bases, and just selling them normal. Be conscientious of like the supply chain element of any popularized method or craft. If one stage in that chain shoots up disproportionate to its average cost, that presents an opportunity. Don't hesitate to jump on those when and if they arise. And what I was talking about with the expected value and the variance, I know that sometimes you guys, when I just show you the highlights, it feels like I'm always just getting lucky, or, I've got some kind of cheat code unlocked. Obviously, it just doesn't make sense a lot of the time to show like the failures, especially when you guys want things tightly packed together. But I did actually think that this was worth noting because I spent hundreds of divs and, as I said, 20 hours putting this together. The first batch that I did, because it was taking too long, that's when I decided to do the annulling and augmenting. And so I think I made, how many do I have here? 13 of them. All right. So we've got 13 bases. And these ones I actually even prepped with like perfect exalts to make it so that like they were a fifth, 2 out of 3 odds. And so watch this before we get into the second part. All right, here we go. Brick, 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 hit, brick. We hit 1 out of 13. The things I do. That's all right, comrades. We made a second batch, and the second batch went a little bit better. But I thought I should show you the bad batch first so you don't get as upset when you watch the next batch. Because the RNG came back around. As I said, sometimes, it's a matter of mathematical certainty that over time, if you do the EV and the law of large numbers applies, you can basically cost account for every action you make in this game. But you'll see here, okay, this is the first time we're going after the lightning ones. All right, so this is the second batch that I did. I'll move my face over so you can see these. First one hits, second one hits, third one miss, fourth one miss, fifth one hits, sixth one miss. So we hit 3 right there. And as you'll see, that's 15 divs for the first fracture. And then the second one, which is 4 to 71, which is a perfect lightning roll. That is the one that I just sold for 30 divines. And then the third one, another 15. So we hit 3 out of 6 on these guys. Maybe I'll move myself to the bottom here. Oh, look at that. Picture in picture. All right. And so that was the first batch. I always did them. Again, we had lightning and then we had the proj ones. The lightning is slightly more common, but I wanted to fracture those ones first there. In the course of doing this, I got one that has both T1 lightning and +2 fracture. And I haven't made that rare because I'm a pussy. It also has 30 crit implicit too. I did my best so that I could kind of narrate this while the videos are playing in the background. I thought that it would be a bit too long if I paused and talked and then played the video like I had in the past time. So there might be a little bit of a gap here, but you'll see me pricing these out now. Okay, here we go. So now we're about to get to the +2 projectile skills. And while we're doing this, this is by far the luckiest part I got. And after we watch the RNG here, so you can see there, I did the Regal, and then this is what you're going to want to do each time, right? And I will go into the details about the Regaling and fracturing in a second, but on this one here, I used a coronation and a perfect Regal, then put on the jawbone to get that desecrated mod and fracture. We hit the damage with bow skills on that first one. So I had 4 of them in my second batch. In that first batch, I went, 1 for 13. In the second batch here, I got a bunch of lightning ones, but we got 4 +2 proges. Okay, so we hit so on these ones here, because these two, you'll notice that they have damage with bow skills, and I'll explain why that's relevant in a second. The first 2 had damage with bow skills. That's third one had fizz to attack, so I didn't have the coronation on there. And then this one has proj speed. And so I do not use a coronation there either. And then there is the one that I hit that has the lightning and the +2 to projectile skills. But as I said, I'm too big of a pussy to do that one. So we missed the first fracture. So we've got 3 more here. All right, pay attention, lads. This was my moment of divine justice. Did I not have any fracturing herbs? Oh, sorry. Looks like we're picking up some fracturing herbs here. Okay, well, while that's starting, I'll explain the Regaling process. Anyways, pay attention to the fracture when it happens. So for the Regaling and fracturing, you can use an accuracy essence, a Regal, perfect Regal, or coronation. and then add the desecrated modifier. Make sure you don't ID it, and fracture for a 1 in 3 chance to hit the +2 fracture. Oh, sorry, we already talked about that. The be conscientious of the supply chain element, and when they arise. Right, that's where we left off. So some more notes about the Regaling, though. Using a perfect Regal has a 1 in 57 chance of hitting +2 projectile skills from a magic quiver that doesn't have it. And so that's not with coronation, just using, so like, let's say you had T1 lightning and like, I don't know, pierce, right? That would have a 1 in 57 of hitting +2 prod skills, which is actually not terrible because perfect regals are only like 15 exalts each. But it does mean, of course, you know, if you don't hit that, then, well, yeah, actually it depends. Like it's obviously definitely worthwhile to use it on a flat lightning roll, but on something where like you had like bow skills or proj and then a non-useful suffix, I don't think that those ones would be worth fracturing if it didn't hit. But I suppose if the magic quiver market gets oversaturated, it might be better EV to just take that 1 in 57. Anyways, okay, here we go to the fracture. First one hits. Second one hits. Third one hits. You go, girl. Yeah. All right. That was justice. Anyways, I got pretty stoked there. But yeah, to follow up on the Regal part. Oh, sorry, before we get to that last part here, I'm going to take a pause. So yeah, you have a 1 in 57 chance to hit the +2 proj. Using coronation is only sensible, in my opinion, if you have damage with bow skills as a prefix paired with +2 projectile, or if you have crit or crit damage as a suffix paired with any prefix. The damage, the bow skills is a damage tagged only modifier, right? So it will guarantee that your Regal, when you use a coronation, will hit flat damage. A perfect Regal by itself does not present the best chance to get +2 projectile skill gems. However, it also significantly increases the chance to get a bad and brickable suffix. By that, I mean one which, if fractured, makes the value of that rare item 0. And if the +2 is not fractured and one shows up, it makes the suffixes a YOLO to remove the unwanted one. Since +2 to projectile skills is item level 41, and a perfect Regal gives a minimum item level of 50, which every single other mod, both prefix and suffix, on a quiver will have at least one modifier that is of that level, meaning that the perfect Regal will always, if it lands a suffix, will always be higher than the +2. So you do want to be conscientious of that. And so because you can't determine the Regal being prefix or suffix unless you can force it with a tag, that's where the accuracy essence comes in, the greater essence. It avoids the fuss, and it adds a low level item level prefix with just the simple attack tag, and it can be rolled away every time after fracturing since it's a prefix, and it'll always be a lower item level than the pre-existing prefix, because that'll be from the transmute will always, or the augment will be above 70, and so the accuracy will always be lower, meaning that you can always roll it away. Once the item is rare with 3 mods, just add the Jawbone and use Sinestral Necromancy if you feel like it. Those are only a couple exalts to make sure it's a prefix. That is the Desecrated mod. And giving the subsequent fracture a 1 in 3 chance of hitting. And again, remember not to reveal it until after. So once you have a fractured rare base, that's what I'm going to show you guys here in the background. And I'll explain this maybe before we go through. But what we're going to do once you have the fractured +2. So if you watch the video here, we'll hover over it in a second. Okay, so you see right there, we've got the +2 to projectile skills on the crit base. And what we're going to do, and you can see I've got a bunch lined up there, is use a homogenized exaltation, a greater exaltation, a dextral exaltation, and then either a greater or perfect exalt and a nulls to get double tier 1 grit. So the homogenized will make it share the tag. The greater makes it add 2 of them. The dextral makes it add suffixes. And then greater makes them minimum item level 35, and perfect makes it minimum item level 50. And what we're going to do to get that attack tag on there, because the +2 proj doesn't have it, all we're going to do is just use a chaos until we get a prefix that has an attack tag. So accuracy, flat fire, flat cold, flat lightning, all have attack tags, and it can be any tier. And so with respect to whether to use a perfect or a greater, that's just like an EV thing you might have to calculate or do the math on. But the only attack tag suffixes are attack speed, crit, and crit bonus. With a perfect exalt, it can only hit tier 1 attack speed, tier 1 or tier 2 crit, or tier 1 or tier 2 crit bonus. Increased attack speed has a weight of 500, Tier 2 and tier 2 crit and crit bonus are 250 weights, and tier 1 and tier 1 crit and crit bonus are 125 weights. So the total weight for each crit mod is 375, and then the attack speed is 500. So 1375 is the total possible weight pool. That means that you're always going to get at least one crit mod though. And since perfect exalts are expensive, and since the item is fractured, you could also just use greater exalts, since a perfect exalt's like 2 divs, but a greater exalt's like 3 exalts. You could just do the same process, but it would just have a much larger variance. And then you could simply use like 2 annuls every, like if you don't hit the greater, or the greater exalt, right? Let's say you hit 1 mod, right? You just get like 1 tier 1. You could use just use an annul, and if the annul removes, let's say, the attack speed, or if it's a tier 2 of the other crit and you want double tier 1, you've got a 50-50, but because you don't have that very high input cost each time, right? Like the homogenized exalts, like 65 exalts, the annuls are like 3-1, and then the other ones are, a couple exalts each, at most, right? So I'll show you again in the thing here. Now, I know that maybe is not the cheapest thing in the world, but it's like a 1 in 30 or 1 in 40 by doing it that way. And perfect exalts, on the other hand, are like 2 divs each, which is almost like 600 exalts, right? So just using 1 perfect exalt, it's like you can, like, the total combined cost of the other ones is like maybe 200. So it's like you get 3 attempts versus, or 4 attempts for every like 1. And so again, that's why you kind of have to do the math. But yeah, it's going to have the larger variance. And once you have the end of this phase, that's more or less where the other video ends. Or sorry, the video from the other day starts. But I'll show you what I just talked about in the abstract here. So you can see we've got those lined up, right? And you can see on this one, we've got the homogenized, the suffixes, the greater, and we're using greater exalts. And you can see here we hit tier 1 crit chance with attacks and tier 2 crit bonus, right? And so I'm going to then grab an annul. And the annul removed the tier 1 crit chance. So we just annul again, and it removed the attack tagged prefix. So now we're just going to use a chaos. And then we're going to chaos until it rolls another prefix with the attack tag. There we go. It got the lightning. And then we're going to do the same thing. And we got tier 1 crit again, but it has attack speed. So we're going to try that again. Okay, so in this case here, because I've got that tier 1 crit and I had some perfect exalts, I thought I would try to kind of like bully this. And instead of trying to go for them both at once, we would just go for it there. But unfortunately, I hit the tier 1 attack speed. In that scenario, it would have been 500 weight for the attack speed, 375 for the bonuses, but only 125 for the tier 1 crit bonus. There we just tried it again, and I hit tier 2 crit bonus. And then I annulled, and it removed that. And then I realized, that was big. I was doing like the math in my head as I was going through this, and really that was just me being impatient. The EV was much better to just do it with the greater essences, and so I returned to doing that. And you can see on that one, we hit attack speed and crit chance. And the annul didn't hit there, so then we chaos the attack speed away. Oh, there we go, fizz. And another thing too, if you get like tier 1 lightning, that's great, but you maybe don't want to keep tier 1, you maybe don't want to keep any prefix that has unless it's desired on the final item, that is a higher item level than either of the crit mods, right? So like there I rolled over tier 1 fizz, even though it was an attack mod, because crit bonus is 74 and crit chance is 72. So if I did hit it right there, I would have had to use a sinestral erasure or a sinestral annul, because the fizz would have been a higher mod, right? Whereas, and that's like 3.5 or 4 divs as opposed to a whittling, which is like 1.5. That's the wishful thinking, but something to be conscious of. All right, so there we got the flat fire. We didn't hit anything on that one again, so we go and we chaos it. Okay, there we got flat cold. We got double crit there, but they're both low tier. Oh, looks like we got tier 1 crit chance, but again, the annul removed it. So we're picking up the tempo here. Oh, that's like tier 4 crit. And the tier 1 attack speed. Oh, again. Oh, that was close. Tier 1 crit chance, tier 2 crit bonus. And again, you can get into a rhythm doing this when it's a high, it's a higher variance, obviously, but each input is relatively low cost. It's not the end of the world. And again, you can see that we get that double crit quite often. It's just the difficulty comes in getting the... And boom! Look at that, Jets. There we go. Double crit chance, tier 1, and it happened to roll on a tier 1 fire. And so this was, of course, I just said that you shouldn't do that, and naturally hit someone where I did. But there you go. So you can see that is how you go about getting it to that state there, and that was what I was referring to with respect to the homogenized, dextral, greater, and greater, just using the annuls. So each attempt will cost you 1 homogenized. It's about 65, 70 exalts, 1 dextral, and 1 greater, which is like 5. So it's like, let's say 70x, 1 greater, 3x, so 73x, and then a 2 annuls, which is like 180. So it's under a div per attempt, approximately. And so that was how you get that to that stage. And if you recall, so where's that, right? So it would be similar to this one right here, right? So you've got the +2, and then the double T1 crit, and you can see we sold that for 75 divs like 30 minutes ago. So once you've hit this phase, you have now created a 75 to 90 divine 3T1 suffix base that can be crafted upon further, used, or sold. You can go back to my last video, which I'll link in the description and at the end of this video, to see how I was crafting them from here to earn thousands of divines that I did. However, there are also numerous other ways to proceed that I'll briefly go over now. To show all of these would make the video too long, so I'll just verbally explain them, and then I will include written instructions in the description. However, if you'd like a separate video demonstrating each one of these, please let me know. So the ways to craft these suffixes after that I'll show you in the last video. So this is assuming that you've already got the suffixes done. So if you've got the fracture on the +2, you can exalt once and whittle until you get tier 1 bow, prod speed, or lightning. Exalt once more to get 2 out of the 3 of the above, and then jawbone, echoes, and light omen to get the final. That was more or less the TLDR of what I showed you last video. So if you want to get the suffixes done and you don't have a fracture, greater exalt once, whittle if you're able, if the resultant mod is below item level 41. If you cannot, use a sinestral crystallization, abyss essence, and that'll put on the mark, right? So the mark of the whatever it's called. But that mark thing is item level 1, right? And because your suffix is, so when it says suffix is done with no fracture, that means you have +2 and the double crit, but none of them are fractured. But because the +2 is item level 41, it's going to be lower than most of the prefixes, right? And so getting this first way, rather than having to use a Omen of the Light, which is like 3 divs, or a Sinestral Annul or a Sinestral Erasure, which are both like 4 divs, what you can do is this, right? So you use the Abyss Essence to get the mark, which is item level 1, and then you do not apply the jawbone to it. And because the mark is item level 1, it is now the lowest mod, so you can roll it away with a whittling, right? So instead of having to, because like normally the whittling will make that prefix higher than the item level 41, so you have to find some way to get rid of it, either by, turning it into a desecrated mod, or by annulling it or erasuring it, which is very expensive and can add up. This means you just have to basically use the whittle, right? So it's less than half the cost, basically a third of the cost. And once you have one prefix done doing this method, you'll have to do the second one using erasure and whittle, and then you'll just desecrate the third prefix. So if you also have double suffixes that are crit with a prefix fractured and a desecrated prefix, so this would look like let's say you had tier 1 crit, tier 1 attack speed, fractured flat lightning, and let's say you had like 50 damage with bow skills, and then desecrated like prod speed. You're going to use an Omen of Light to remove the prefix that's desecrated. You're then going to use a whittling to roll the third suffix, which will typically be attack speed, into the prefix, and just use a normal chaos orb here in case the whittling re-rolls the third suffix into another suffix. We want to minimize the likelihood that it hits either tier 1 dex or tier 1 pierce, as either of those would brick the item, but they're the only mods that can brick the item. This is a very low chance, but it is technically possible. It has not happened to me once in 20 plus tries, however, and the actual odds are 1,500 out of 49,050, which means there's a 3.05% chance to brick versus a approximately 97% chance to succeed. And then after you roll that attack speed into a prefix, desecrate the third suffix, selecting a mod that is a higher item level than the prefixes that are undesired to force your witlings onto the prefixes, and just do that until the prefixes are finished. Then use an Omen of Light and a Echoes and Jawbones to get +2 projectiles. If you get +2 projectiles on the first try, just keep that and either sell the base or reroll the prefixes using Sinestral Erasure or Whittling. The best prefix to fracture is Lightning, then Bow Skills, and then Prod Speed. Now, if you have a double suffixes crit with no fracture and 3 prefixes, Sinestral Crystallization and Abyss Essence to turn one of the prefixes into a desecrated mod, then remove it with Omen of Light, and then reroll the third suffix into a prefix, and then just follow the steps from the previous method. So this first one assumed that there was already a desecrated mod. This would be a scenario where there is not a desecrated prefix. And here is a budget crafting for self-use kind of version. Once you have the fractured +2 to projectile skills, you can then use Chaos until you get T1 Lightning. Then you're going to use a homogenized plus Dextral plus Greater Exalt plus Perfect Exalt, and to try and get the double crit like we did earlier. If it does not land the double crit, you can then use a Dextral Crystallization and an Essence of Hysteria, which will take one of the suffixes and add 50% damage to bow skills as a prefix, right? So now you'll have the 50% damage with bow skills, T1 Lightning +2, and then 1 suffix. And then you can also then use the Dextral Crystallization and the Abyss Essence to take your third prefix into a desecrated one, and you will choose Prod Speed, and that will also remove the suffix again. So now you'll have Prod Speed, Bow Skills, Lightning, +2, and 2 open suffixes. And then you can Greater Exalt and Perfect Dogs Exalt, which again will guarantee at least 1 crit mod and the attack speed, potentially the 2 crit mods. I showed you guys that in the video. But you will now have T1 Lightning, T2 Bow Skills, T1 Prod Speed, +2 Prod Gem, and then 2 out of 3 of either Tier 1 attack speed or Tier 1 or 2 crit bonus or crit chance. Now, as an alternative way to craft this as well, if you're starting from the Fractured T1 Lightning, you can Chaos until you get +2, and then just use the same thing with Greater Homogenization, Greater Exalt, Homogenized Exalt, Dextral Exalt, and Perfect Exalt for the 2 out of 3 of attack speed bonus and crit chance. And you can repeat that process infinitely until you get +2, T1 crit, T1 crit, and if you really wanted to. Once that's done, just exalt a prefix. You could then use Sinestral Crystallization and Hysteria to add 50% bow damage, desecrate the final prefix, and to get the T1 Prod Speed. In that case, if you got double crit, but they were like Tier 2, I would use the Hysteria. If you got double Tier 1 crit in that scenario, I would use Sinestral Erasures and Whittlings, and then desecrate the last one, because then it would be 6T1. If you're going to just choose 1 suffix, so like if you're really low budget and you can't afford to roll it away, especially like, let's say you can only afford the 1 fractured base and you can't keep using the homogenized omens or whatever, prioritize crit chance over crit bonus if you can only choose 1 of the crit mods. Attack speed is actually technically more efficient than the crit bonuses in that slot anyways. So crit chance, attack speed is certainly competitive, but crit chance is very important to have there on the quiver, because it's hard to get crit as a bow build, and because the quivers also get multiplied by effect with quivers. So if you're going to do that, prioritize that. But there we go, lads. That brings us to the end of our very first entry-level crafting video. Please leave a comment below and let me know what you guys thought. If you have any questions, or if you have any ideas or suggestions about what to do next, please consider liking, subscribing, hyping, sharing, turning on notifications, leaving a comment, etc. if you'd like to see more. The analytics and comments on each video are the best and easiest way for me to gauge what you guys like and want to see more of. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck with your crafts, gentlemen, and I hope you guys are all having a great weekend. Again, here are some of these crafts in every one of the stages. If you guys want more specific information, every single thing mentioned in here has been crafted and sold. I'll just do a quick little thing here. And I do have actually video on all of these as well through those processes. So if there's anything that you guys think I kind of skimped on explaining or was too abstract, feel free to mention that and I can maybe do a follow-up. I can even do like a YouTube short, but you can see here when I type visceral how many of these we've done, right? So again, this is definitely something that still works, and I hope that this video was a bit more accessible for you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing your feedback. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you soon, fellas.